Beyond all that is known and unknown, wait the doors of perception. We can open the way before us with the key of knowledge to find the answers to the questions that haunt us, but we must open our minds to perceive the existence of realities that can take us far beyond all that we may even imagine. We must dare to face the darkness. It's time for us to go hunting the shadows. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Dennis Carroll, and this is Hunting the Shadows, episode 52. And this is a very auspicious occasion. This is 9/11, 23 years later. This is something we want to always remember, is something we can't forget. When the day that the world changed for us 23 years ago on this day. And I remember well where I was at. I was working at the hospital there where I worked. I worked there for about 30 years. And I remember the communications going down that day. And some of the things that took place, we actually gathered in the auditorium for prayer. I remember that very well. And I knew it was very serious when they started talking about grounding all the planes in this country, the airlines and everything. We knew it was something very big going down, and it was a very interesting time, to say the least. And like I say, all of our communications went down. We couldn't get on the internet. We couldn't do anything. It was really freaky time. But we gathered. I remember gathering in the auditorium and praying, that day. And we prayed for our country. And I think we still need to do that, especially not on just this day, but every day. We need to think about that. We need to realize where our votes go. We have a very important time coming up in this country. And we need to be very prayerful about things like that. And this is a day, of course, a solemn day of a lot of things that happened back 23 years ago. Absolutely. I want to make a quick announcement that I will be, we will have a special show Friday night, this Friday night, Paranormal Point of View, Friday the 13th. We'll be having a special show then. And also, I want to let everybody know, don't forget, Sunday night will be the premiere of the Midnight Road, Excursions into the Unknown. We've got some very, very interesting stuff ahead for you on that. I hope everybody's had a great week so far. And I have a fellow now with me tonight, my brother, Bigfoot Michigan Rob. And I call him the Paranormal Pirate. That's who he is. Okay. And we're going to bring him on now. Here's the man, the myth, and the legend. Here he is. Well, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm pretty good, Dennis. I wouldn't say legend quite yet, but thank you for that.
Well, hopefully one day we'll all be legends in our own mind.
We'll be. Yeah. I guess right now, yeah, we're all a legend in our own mind, I guess. But and really briefly, I did want to say that yes, that fateful day, my prayers goes out to everybody that experienced loss on that tragic 9/11, and to all our military and the people that protect us every day in our military. And it's funny, I had the day off that day and from work, and I was happened to be laying in bed, and I turned on, I think, whatever came on. It was on every channel, and I just woke up where the first of the two buildings was struck by the airplane, and I'm laying there, and I can't fathom or process what's going on. And then, as I'm starting to wake up, I seen the other plane, boom, and then I realized that, wow, history, unfortunate history for all of us Americans, and loss of life was being made.
Well, if you remember that day, well, how we all got together, we pulled together across all political lines, every kind of line there was.
Yep.
We were Americans that day, definitely, without a doubt. We
You
were
know,
we were, we were made that way, and like I say, it was a day that changed the world really for us in many aspects. Things have been completely different since then. That was just sort of like this country turned a corner in history. Whether it was a good corner or a bad corner, that's just the way it goes with history.
I I agree with you, and the only positive out of that tragedy was for at least a year, true patriotism, and our country did pull together.
Hmm.
Now, 23 years later, we won't get into it, Dennis, of course, but now we're at a great divide, and right now it's kind of sad. And I'll leave it at that, of course.
Oh yeah, and that's what I was telling somebody the other day. Although we may never completely agree with each other on a lot of stuff, and it's great when we do. But we may not agree together on everything. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the prerogative of being American. I
Yes.
may not believe what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And we've lost that, I think a little bit. And when it comes to political stuff, and that's why I try not to get too political. I know you don't either
Yep.
on our shows because that's what, it's not what it's all about. But you have to be very careful on certain subjects. People are ready to kill you for things. Nowadays, they're ready to come after you for things like that. And we didn't used to be that way.
No, it never was, and it's always great. In fact, it makes up our construct. It's great to agree. It's great to disagree, and it's great to debate.
Yeah.
That's the fabric of society, and you need that. But again, we don't talk politics. In today's world, it's far beyond that, and hopefully down the road things change. But
Well, that's the way the great philosophers used to do. They would get together and they would debate things. But that's how you learn stuff. You learn
absolutely,
different perspectives and point of views of other people and all that. And if you lose that, you lose a lot of knowledge from doing things like that. That's what I was saying the other day about shows like all the podcasts. And I'm not just bragging on my own. I mean yours, all these other podcasts are doing one really good thing, and that's bringing a lot of this stuff out into the open.
yes.
And it's being discussed and looked at. That's good. That's always good when you do that.
Yeah, I know that. I love that. That's why I love doing my show and you doing your show and all the other podcasters out there because it's a safe place. I mean, I feel what I have going on is a safe place, and the world would be boring, Dennis, if everybody agreed, right? So you always have to have
Oh yeah.
that pushback, right? Because that's what makes us learn, as you said, and I'm
Mhm.
all about that until it gets really to the extreme, and that's not necessary.
That's what somebody once said about yes men. They always yes, yes, yes. You might feel good for a while, but eventually you get bored with those people.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
that's just the way it goes. But you are, by the way, a very busy person. I mean, how many
yeah.
you've got? How many shows going on now?
Oh boy, I've got 3 shows on my channel, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, YouTube. I got Tuesday night at 9 with Krista, Blondes and Booze. I got Thursday afternoon with Tex, brunch with Bigfoot Rob at 1. And then I'm doing a midnight show on Saturday with my girl buddies from the Blondes and the Booze and Monica Rollins. So yeah, 3 shows, 3 shows a week, 9, 1, and midnight. So I mix it up. It's every I catch every what do you call it? Every coast, throughout the United States, which is cool.
Yeah, well, you keep you very busy. It keeps you out of trouble, though, right? Must have now.
Keeps me out of trouble. My life isn't boring. I did a stint on Coast to Coast Radio for the first time 3 weeks ago, which was awesome. And
Yeah,
you know,
I listened to some of that. You
oh,
did very good with
I
that.
haven't even heard it back. They won't send me a copy because it's behind a paywall, and I don't have, they're on AM radio and everything else. You have to be a
All
a
right.
member. but they're going to send me a free copy, and that was fun. And you know what? I was talking with George Nuri, and do you know, Dennis, we got to talking pre-show. He and I went to the same high school and lived in the same neighborhood. Yeah, so we hit it off immediately, and he's about 10 years older than me, so we never our paths never crossed, but he lived 3 miles from me.
Maybe he'll invite you back then, maybe.
Maybe he'll give me a daytime slot, and I can do that. I can go on coast to coast as a host. That'd be a feather in the cap.
Yeah, I said I would like to get on there myself one day. That would be interesting. I've heard him so many years, and Art Bell before that.
Yeah,
you know, it's always been a fascinating show. He always has some very interesting people on there. Absolutely. And speaking of interesting, tonight we're going to be talking about your newest book. I've got it right here, and I've got the screen grab on it. I'm going to put it up later, but this is
sure.
This is True Cryptid Encounters Book 2, and I was telling you before the show, I don't know how you did it, but you outdid yourself on this one. You outdid number 1, okay? There's just some great stuff in it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Dennis. You know, when I wrote book 1, I thought it was good and liked it, and then book 2, it's like, getting some pretty good reviews. Anybody that buys it, please leave a review on Amazon. And the difference between book 1 and book 2, they're both the same. They're about the same length. They're both like 45,000 words, but there's 10 less stories in book 2 because they're a little more detailed and more in depth. And book 2 has a lot more paranormal and mixed in with it, which makes it kind of fascinating. So thank you so much for that, Dennis. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And yeah, so thank you. Thank you for having me on.
I'm gonna ask you the same thing I asked. I had Dacre Stoker on here some time back, and I asked him the same thing. When it comes to writing, I have this problem. I said it's the organizational part of it that takes up a lot of your time. How do you organize these?
Well, it's funny. That's a great question because that was my, I tell you what, to write it, it didn't take long at all, but it took me forever because you got to figure going way back to book 1. When I first started doing the podcast, I was getting inundated with emails and people would call me or message me with their stories. And I always just kind of saved them, put them on the back burner and just had them to utilize down the road. And boy, I think in 2 books I've written, I think there's a total of 90 stories in both books, but Dennis, I've got 150. And the hard part was deciding which ones to go with. What would the people like the most, but they were hard. And as far as organization was, I'm not very good with organization. So it was just reams of reading, and I kind of put all the stories in a number from 1 to like 90 or 100, what I thought was the best, down to the one that was the least, right? That took me forever and a day because I knew when I wrote book 1 that I had enough material for 2 books. So the question was, make one big, huge book or break it up into separate parts, 2 books, which was a lot easier to do, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as organizational goes, and then you had to call people and ask them if I can use your story. Some people said yes, some said no. Some said just make it as a video. Then you had people saying, well, yeah, you can use it. I want proceeds, royalties from the book. I'm like, come on, man. You want to be, and all the people in the book they want to be in anonymity. You want to be in anonymity, yet you want money. So that was kind of a tough part. But hey, life goes on, and people are people, right? And I don't have a qualm with that. And so so that was the tough part, was organizing and arranging everything to make it flow. And so that was very challenging. I think book 3 will be easier because I'm not going to do the same thing. I'm starting a book. It's going to be about my paranormal life from 5 years old to current day. And that's going to be a novel, Dennis. That'll take a year and a half to get out, I think. So that's my next project.
But yeah, especially they love a series of type books. That's a lot of people do. I've done that myself. I get caught up on the series. I want to read more about it, and it does entice people to do that. I'm sitting on a couple of books myself that's already written. All I got to do put them together. That's the big part. A lot of people don't understand that when you come to writing, it's putting together what you've written in a cohesive manner, so
Yes.
that people can read it. That's a big part of the job. Absolutely, that's different than the creative process of it.
No, I agree with you 1,000%. And I will say this, since I put out, so the first book's been out for over a year and like 2 months, and this book I just released last month, end of August. But I will say this, people that have gone on Amazon, they're buying book one. Book one sales are picking up because they've got to read book one before they read book two, but they don't have to. It's not.
Yeah.
You can read either one out of sequence. It's not like a sequel. So that was pretty cool. I've seen that spike up a little bit. So yeah, I'm very pleased for a guy that never thought I'd write a book, let alone have a podcast. So I'm pretty grateful.
Hmm. Yeah. Especially when you're dealing with a subject like the paranormal.
Yeah.
You know, it comes at you from so many different directions. Sometimes,
Yes.
especially when you're dealing with cryptids. That's
Yeah.
the fascinating part of cryptidology. I like to call it uh, paracryptidology, the study of monsters. Okay, that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
And
No, I would agree.
you got so many different factors in this involved. And we're going to talk about a couple of those tonight. Definitely, some of them that I picked out. A couple of instances in the book here. The cemetery dogman was
Right.
the one that hit me first. But I'm going to tell you what brought that up to mind. I don't know if you're familiar with this, or you might have saw it when it happened. And I think there was a film that was put out showing an actual dogman type creature in the cemetery digging a grave up. Do you remember that?
I remember
Did
that.
you ever
I
see?
don't remember everything that was behind it, to be honest. I remember similar ones, a couple in fact, but it might not be the same one you're thinking of. But yes,
Well, that's a very strange connection with cemeteries and these dogmen entities that people talk about. And we mentioned a little bit, we talked a few minutes before the show about there may be some type of a conjuring factor thing going on here with some
yeah,
of these things. I believe without a doubt some of this stuff's being called forth from the darkness. And as you know, if you're familiar with the Appalachians, and there are a lot
right,
of stories, a lot of witchcraft stories of people turning into black leopards and big black cats or other types of animals. And also going along with that, you have the werewolf. The traditional werewolf is a product of a supernatural thing, okay, a chain of the supernatural power
yes,
that is shape shifting.
yes,
And all of these things have that demonic element to them to a certain extent. And you have to wonder, about this connection with cemeteries, graveyards that's going on with some of these things. These things that you report, especially in your book, and that's what the one thing that really struck me when I read this book. A lot of this stuff is very, very dark. You know?
you know, and I will say in book two, there's a lot more dogman entity stories than like Bigfoot. And I've also got an alien abduction, which is something different. That's in there, but you make a great point because throughout the last since I've been doing my podcast for about 3 years now, I find a lot of people that we talk about on the show or from what I read, Dogman does seem to hang out a lot at the cemetery.
Hmm.
And whether it's a werewolf or a dogman, two different things in my opinion. But why is that? And I don't think that I think that's a mystery that I find it fascinating to figure out why indeed these creatures hang out amongst the dead.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there is that demonic connection with cemeteries. As a matter of fact, I just had my niece actually yesterday had a demonic encounter in a cemetery. I'm going to be talking about that Friday. But
Okay.
you run into that factor when it comes to places of the dead, places of trauma, battlefields, wherever there's been a lot of blood spilled and stuff. You seem to have this very dark connection. And as you and I were talking about, and we have to wonder about this. Could some of these dog men, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them
Yeah.
could be some type of an unknown werewolf. And we speculated that maybe we've got reverse wolves,
Yeah.
werewolves, that
Right.
they are turning from this thing into human beings.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, we were talking about that backstage, and I just came across and I was thinking about this several months ago. How okay, a human being ship shifting into a werewolf. I mean, if you look at the science side of it, it would like kill a man. If I were to turn into an actual werewolf and extend my appendages and my cranium, and it would just have to kill my physical body. I do believe that that's happened back in folklore. But then I was thinking, what if really it's not an actual human shape shifting into a werewolf? What is an actual werewolf that shape shifts into a human? And that's something that I pondered a few months ago, and I think that's well worth looking into, like you were saying.
Mm, that's true. And you've got that dark magic thing going on here. Okay. It could go either way if you were working with something like that. The very famous thing about the werewolf putting the pelt on, the belt turns him into the werewolf kind of thing. We're talking about like the very famous Peter Stubb. They talk
Yeah.
about that supposedly did that. He even killed his own child, supposedly. All this stuff is grounded, Rob, in deep, dark witchcraft and magic in a lot of aspects. And here's the thing about it, and I've often talked about this before, and you may have a different slant on it than I do, but I have to wonder about Dogman, okay? Because there seems to be something even other than Bigfoot, okay? And I have seen Bigfoot face to face. I know he exists
Yeah.
without a doubt. The thing about the Dogman that strikes me is very unnatural. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I can see Bigfoot being kind of natural, but when it comes to Dogman, it seems to be you got some kind of a very unnatural thing going on here. What do you think?
I agree with you, and I'll tell you this. In all honesty, every Dogman account that I've been sent in, or anybody that I've had on the show talking about Dogman, it's never pleasant. There's always something sinister behind it. You know, they there's that feeling of dread. You know how they talk about that feeling of dread in the woods?
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, maybe Bigfoot, you get that a little bit, sure, but it always seems to be a Dogman. It's always when the people come up across these things
Mhm.
where they actually have a face to face and the dog man looks into their eyes and the dog man grins. How it can even grin with a snout is able to shift its face in that sinister grin. And a lot of times the folks get that communication that the dog man is saying inadvertently, I could kill you if I wanted to. But then they take off and they just leave you with that feeling of look
Mhm.
out. Because you really don't hear a lot of dogman or werewolves killing people outside of like maybe the famous LBL where that's been documented. But I think there's a lot of things, especially with the missing 411, that perhaps these things are a part of that we don't really know. I think it's sinister. I don't think there's anything good about it. People might disagree. I don't know. But that's just what I've come across with talking to hundreds of people over the last 3 years.
Well, another aspect of the Dogman thing and the dark magic thing is the fact that some of these things, Rob, seem like they're sent on a mission. Like they have something
Mm,
to do, or they've been
yeah,
sent for some reason to do something. They're not just a force of nature out there tearing up things or killing people. They actually seem to be on some type of a mission. What do you think? Have
I
you
think
noticed
there
that?
I think there is a mission. In fact, a couple of stories I'm gonna share tonight, I think there's an agenda and a mission. I think their agenda is a
Yep.
brief agenda or theory is that they want you, the human being, to know that, hey, we're here and we know what's going on. Because I've done stories about the paranormal dogman, um, a physical dogman, which is still a paranormal entity, but they always seem to send that message that we're not from this realm. I don't think dogman is like a wolf running around as a physical creature. I don't. Now, there's some people that suggest that there's a dog man, which is a dog that runs around. It's got that oversized Doberman Pinscher or
Mm-hmm.
German Shepherd head. It's got the hock legs and they can run for a distance, but it's like an animal. I know people that subscribe to that, but also I subscribe to the theory that that probably exists. But I think many of the ones that I come across when people talk to me about are from a different realm of reality.
Well, that's it about what struck me strange about this main story. This is almost in the middle of the book here, about the cemetery dog man. This
Yep.
guy staked that cemetery out. He was stalking dog man, you might say,
Yeah.
and he knew that there was a lot of activity, something going on with his cemetery. Now, let me say this. I'm just going to throw it out there. It's my own experience. I've actually had several experiences with cemeteries where dark witchcraft was performed in them. Okay.
Yeah.
They're opening doorways in these places, Rob, with these
Okay.
rituals, whatever they're doing. And most of the time, these idiots do not close that door. Okay. They just leave it
Yeah.
open. And I think that may be another connection with some of these cemeteries and dog man. What do you think?
I think so too. In fact, the story I'm about to share kind of has a lot of that same connotation. I think that with this story, I think he left something open because later on in life, it
Mm-hmm.
it happens again. And you're right. If you want me, I can get into that, and it'll kind of unfold this story. If you want, I can talk about the cemetery dog man. If you like me to get rolling with that,
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
That's
kind of
yeah. That's yeah.
yeah, it kind of reverts back to what you were saying. What you said is kind of about this story, and it was about this group of friends. It was like Bill. Their names were Bill, Sandy, and Ted, and they were a group of friends, all about the same age. And this took place in I want to say it was in somewhere in the Midwest. It was either Illinois or Wisconsin. I don't remember. Or I can't recall from the book, but this group of individuals were interested in the dogman phenomenon. And they used to go to the cemetery researching and looking for dogman because they heard that's where they kind of hung out, right? And this took place back in the 1990s, so it's kind of relevant. It's kind of, it's not like back in the 1800s, early 1900s. It's within 20 years. Yeah, and this group of individuals, they went to the forest, which there was a cemetery in the forest. And so one night they all went to the cemetery. They got there right before sunset and they set up their camp outside of this cemetery. And right as the sun is going down, they're looking over the cemetery. They're looking over they're reading the headstones and just doing like, creepy, all this, strange stuff, right? So they set up camp and they're just viewing the cemetery as the sun goes down. Now, within minutes, 20 minutes or so after the sun sets, there's like a glowing light, and they see parading about the headstones is a shadow figure. Now, this shadow figure is kind of like gliding about the headstones, frolicking about. It's a dark shadow. It's kind of a figure. It's not a dog man. It's not a Bigfoot. More like a human, but it's parading about. Maybe 5'8" tall, 5'8" tall or so, parading about. and they're watching this. They're like, whoa, what have we come across here? Some sort of spirit, dark shadow person. And then all of a sudden, a second figure materializes along with this shadow type entity. Now, this thing is a lot larger, almost double the size of this shadow person. And it, in concert with this shadow person, is kind of dancing about with them. And as these three people, Bill, Sandy, and Ted, they look in on it. They see this thing as a shape of an oversized wolf. They can distinctly see a shape of a wolf on two legs dancing about. Now, Dennis is it's not a physical entity. It's not a flesh and blood. It seemed more ethereal. It would seem like translucent, but a distinct frame, much like the shadow person. And all of a sudden, when this dogman creature, werewolf creature appears, the three in the group immediately, like we've heard many times, got this feeling of dread came about them. They are scared. They don't know why. Now, certainly, I would be a little scared to see that at the instance anyways. If I see a shadow person and a werewolf figure dancing in the cemetery, I'm going to get a feeling of dread myself. And they're observing this. And the guy that told me the story said it felt otherworldly, not a part of this realm. So, again, they're dancing about freely, these two entities. So the three of them, they decide, hey, we've had enough of this. They're scared, and they decide to leave the cemetery, leave the forest. Now, which is revealed a little later in the story, two of the three individuals, I think there was four, but three of them for sure had some communications, and revealed later in the story, they all had these dreams about the cemetery, about that night. And this went on for many years, about 4 years. 4 years passed. Now, again, there's four people, but I'm going to specify two, and the third one is irrelevant because after the 4 years passed, Bill and Sandy, Bill was one of the parties, Sandy was the other, and I think the other one, Ted, he's out of the picture at this point. They happened to run into each other, whether coincidence or not, I don't know. I don't really believe in coincidences, but they meet each other, they run into each other at a restaurant. And Bill is looking over, recognizes this woman as Sandy, the lady he was with at the cemetery 4 years prior. And they see each other, their eyes meet, and they both get together. They sit down at the restaurant and they start talking about the past. They talked about how they've got their new careers going on. They all live in different states, mind you. They all moved away from each other, so they kind of lost, they were not in touch with each other, except for maybe some social media here and there. And they started talking. Now, Bill got the sense when talking with Sandy that she really was giving him a bunch of small talk, and he could tell that something was on her mind. When he just came out and says, Sandy, what's on your mind? What's really on your mind? It's been 4 years. She goes, Bill, you remember 4 years ago at the cemetery and we saw those entities and that werewolf looking thing and that shadow person thing? He goes, yeah. She goes, over the past 4 years, I've been having these reoccurring nightmares. They're replaying in my brain in a dream state about that entire episode. She goes, I cannot get rid of them. Bill about drops his jaw. He's like, Sandy, I've been having those same reoccurring nightmares myself over the last 4 years. So now their minds are clicking and they're said, what is this connection? The same dreams 4 years later. They asked if they were in touch with the other two individuals. No, they hadn't. So what Bill and Sandy decided to do was, you know what? Let's go take some vacation time. Let's get together. Let's go back to the cemetery. Let's kind of get to the bottom of these dreams and what we were experiencing. So they both take time off from work. They take vacation days. They meet up and they go back to their original location from the previous 4 years. They get to the cemetery. They do their camp. They set up exactly like it was the prior 4 years. And they're ready to hopefully have an experience or at least get their questions answered strange enough, right? They need a closure. Sun sets again, much like last time. And then all of a sudden, Dennis and everybody listening, what appears as the sun sets is that same shadowy figure dancing about the headstones in the cemetery. Then all of a sudden, guess what else appears shortly thereafter is that werewolf looking entity appears dancing about, much like their first experience from 4 years ago. However, this experience is a little different. As I mentioned earlier, the werewolf dogman creature from prior 4 years ago seemed metaphysical, more transparent. Now, this thing started out that way, Dennis, and all of a sudden it took on a physicality about it. It's like it was no longer transparent and it formed into an object, a physical object, and they see a werewolf standing and it makes eye contact with both Bill and Sandy, stares at them, stares both into their eyes, looks right into them. Sandy and Bill shut their eyes because they get this feeling that they're about to be murdered by this werewolf. They shut their eyes, they hug each other in the grips of fear, and they just shut their eyes, waiting for their imminent deaths. Then all of a sudden, both Sandy and Bill get a telepathic communication sent to them simultaneously. And it says to Sandy and Bill, I hope you're now satisfied. Leave now while you have the chance. They scurried out of there, never to return. And I got to tell you, they got their answer. Now, their answer might not be complete, but what they saw, it was real. And the answer they got was, you've seen us, you've seen me, don't come back. And yeah, Dennis, I mean, what do you make of that? That's terrifying.
Well, I think they were incredibly lucky because they ran into some very dark magic, and that shadow figure definitely was probably a necromancer of some sort, and he was the one manifesting that dog man or werewolf or whatever that being entity was supposed to be. And the second time, his power was a little more stronger. But I tell you what, those two people experienced, Rob, was what we call a haunting curse.
Okay.
A curse that gets on you. It's not like a bad luck curse. That's a different kind of a curse altogether. Or it's not like a bloodline curse.
Okay.
A haunting curse means something, an experience that you have, especially with some type of dark magic like this incident evidently was. Will stain you spiritually, you might say, and it will attach to you, and it will haunt you. It will be in your dreams. It will give you that weird feeling, that you get, and it is a curse to a certain extent because it sticks with you. And I think they got the real answer the second time when they said, "Oh, you've seen what you wanted to see. Now I hope you're satisfied," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they were very lucky though that it stopped there because it could have gotten a whole lot worse. I can see a lot of different ways that could have went, and none of them were good. They were incredibly lucky that this person let them off the hook, you might say.
Yeah, I mean it did, and I often wonder about that if something demonic, Dennis, wouldn't it try to cause further harm? I mean, this did seem to let them off the hook. It did seem to give them a reprieve from death. I'm just wondering, we all talk about the demonic side, but I think
Well,
an actual demon would have taken them down, right? I mean,
that's where the
I,
necromancy comes in. The necromancy part. This was a human being, a dark, although it was a dark, demonically connected human being
okay.
doing this stuff. So the demonic will not usually ever let you off the hook that easily. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
They do a lot more damage to you than this guy. So luckily they just ran in to somebody that cut them some slack.
Yeah.
That's what I've often said about the big thing, the big difference between a werewolf and a dog is the dog man may cut you a break. The werewolf will not because
Okay.
it is a psychopathic killer,
Okay.
apex killer. That's what it
Right.
does. It doesn't just kill you, Rob. And if I were to walk up to two different scenes and I see somebody mauled to death in one and I see dismembered in the other, I'd say that's a werewolf. A
Yeah.
werewolf tears you completely to pieces. And maybe
Absolutely.
even eat you. It'll even probably take a bite out of you,
Mhm.
several bites. Dogman has not ever much been reported to do that. There are some
Right.
cases, supposedly. Most of the time, he'll maul you when he does attack you. But a lot of times, he
Okay.
lets people off the hook. So there's a very big difference. But here's the thing about that case that we're talking about right here. That was definitely a necromancer. He was
Okay.
out in the cemetery doing his stuff, playing, having fun, doing whatever he was doing, and they just stumbled upon. They were incredibly lucky. That's the only thing I can tell them in that respect. But they did have. That's why they had the nightmares. That's why they couldn't forget what happened. It was
Yeah.
sort of a haunting curse to it.
Okay. Hey, I really briefly, hey, everybody in chat. I'm kind of not really reading chat, but I did happen to see JoJo asked, did the nightmares stop there? And yes, they did. No dreams or nightmares ever since that last. I hope you're satisfied type of thing. And no, Jason Finch, he's not my nephew. He calls me Uncle Rob. Thanks, Jason. So yeah, so thanks everybody for coming on in. I'm sorry that I can't talk to everybody, but thanks. But Jojo, yeah, it did end there, and so yeah, so when you talk about necromancy, really
Mhm.
briefly, Des, isn't that it could be it could even be a person, right? Don't they tear apart bodies and try to read the thoughts of the dead? Is that a part of necromancy?
Yeah, well, it's got the connection with the dead, like places of dead, like cemeteries and all that. They do a lot of business in there, but it's also trying to get information from the dead. It's get or raising the dead, sending malevolent spirits out as revenants against people. Necromancy goes in a lot of different areas. It's
Mm.
just fooling around with the dead or places of the dead. But the necromancy is sort of a step up when it comes to warlocks or wizards or whatever name you want to give them. They're sort of a step up on the rung of your normal kind of guy practicing black magic. They're
Mhm.
getting into much deeper and darker demonic stuff when it comes to necromancy. Uh, that's what makes the mancer so dangerous. They're dealing with direct demonic power. It's
Okay.
not just going through some other things or whatever. They're getting their power source direct, and that can be much more dangerous, much more deadly in the way it is put out. That's what makes them so dangerous. It's that power hookup,
Do you
that
think
they've
there's
got
a
going on.
let me ask you this, because I was reading this book called The Necromancer, and I guess it's like 20 years ago. I was reading this very cool book, and as I was reading this, it was about this person that was a necromancer, and then halfway through the book, I found out that this necromancer individual, as the novel continues on, was actually a vampire. Is there any validity between that? Do you think there's a relationship between vampires and necromancy?
Well, that ties in with the dark witchcraft thing. If I were a necromancer or even a wizard or whatever power I am, the higher up the witchcraft rung I go, the more power I get.
Okay.
Okay, and that's what we've talked about a lot of times, Rob, with all these rituals that you see going on sometimes with some of these concert stages and some other stuff going on. Why are they doing that? Because the more participants, even if you're just watching, you're participating. Okay, that's the dangerous aspect in this. Just like those people in the cemetery, they were participants whether they knew it or not. In that
Okay.
respect, that raises that cone of power. Okay, that's why you have covens and cults that do this kind of stuff. They're raising the power. But when you go higher up on that ladder, that gives you shape shifting abilities. You
Mm.
can not only call these things up from the darkness, you can become these things. You can become a werewolf. You can become a vampire. You can become a beast. You can even turn into a tiger or a leopard or things like that.
Mm.
That's the power they're after, to change themselves and really what they're doing is seeking to change reality itself. You might
Wow.
say.
Yeah. No. Hey, it's really it's fascinating. I mean, that's why I love doing this because it's just there's so many rabbit holes with all this. You know, Dennis. I mean, and you certainly are very knowledgeable, and that's why I like when you're on my show or on our shows because you learn so much. And there's so much that we don't know. As much as we think we know, Dennis, we probably don't know half of it. Would you think that's a fair statement?
Well, pretty close, right?
Yeah, I
Pretty
mean,
close. Yeah, absolutely,
you
man.
certainly know more than I do. I'll give you that at least. Say, yeah, I'm just learning, but it's I tell you what, I tell you, here's the thing, in the back of both my books, I put the back side of the book says, "Are we not alone in the forest?" So I'm going to ask you, we're not alone in the forest, are we? And I'm not talking about wolves and bears and tigers and lions if you're in Africa. We're talking about these entities. They're out there and we don't realize they're there.
I think a lot of times, Rob, these entities, like I say, may be called forth in certain areas to be guardians. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but I've been in a lot of places out in the forest where some of these rituals have taken place. Some of these occult meetings have gone on where they do stuff, their sacrifices or whatever they do, and they have guardians over these areas to keep people out, scare them off, or to really do what a guardian does. It guards, and it will also kill if necessary to
Yeah.
to hold to hold some of these places. You're dealing with some very dark stuff, and like I said, on this witchcraft ladder, the further up you go, the more horrible things you have to do to obtain this power.
Mm.
You start off by killing your sibling, your brother or your sister or your cousin or somebody that's very close to you blood wise. You have to have the blood sacrifice, and like Cain and Abel in the Bible, it has to be a relative to begin with.
And
It has
that's
to
to
be
what
somebody of your own blood. Yeah.
is that to break the hex or the black magic spell put on you? I think isn't it similar to like the Wendigo or maybe it's not the Wendigo, but is that the only way some people have to break the curse is to take the blood of a relative, or am I on is there a different?
Well, here's the interesting thing, Rob. A
Yeah.
lot of this stuff triggers off or works off of how much darkness you already had in you. Okay.
Okay.
If you're a very light, positive person, it will not find a purchase on you like it will if you're leaning a little bit towards that darkness. That's what it likes. And that's what it will seek out. And people who have problems, and like I have been on search for Wendigos, I have actually had some interesting experiences with that. I won't get into it tonight, but
Yeah.
it's fascinating stuff. It is a spiritual thing, a dark spirit of nature in a certain extent. It can take on a form when he wants to. It can take over you when he wants to. But you got to have that darkness in you. That's what I'm saying. It's sort of like an open door spiritually. If you've got already got a little bit of that darkness, a little bit of that persuasion to you, then that's what it really attaches to. and can do something with. Those are the people that need to really be very careful, be worried about what they're doing. Because if you're fascinated, if you're obsessed with it, and I've had a lot of people come to me over the years, Rob, saying, "Oh, tell me all about demons, 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 demons." And all they were obsessed with these things, and I said, "That's not good." They like that. That will draw them to you. You're opening a door you don't need to open, and that's the way a lot of these things go, especially like the Wendigo. It is a dark spirit, and dark spirits seek out what? Darkness.
Right.
That's the way they go.
Do you think that we can, in our dreams, manipulate and turn dreams into actual reality, or is that just something that's out of our subconscious?
There are certain entities that can attack you in your dreams. I have been attacked in my dreams.
Mm.
There are certain things that can come into your dreams from I call it the outside effect. It's not just your subconscious thing going on. There can be an outside element that comes in. Not every time, but I mean, once in a while you can encounter that. That can happen. Some people call them dream demons, whatever name you want to call these. And here's the freaky part, Rob. These things, there are certain people who can do this with black magic that can actually invade your dreams. That's scary. That ought to be scary because they're fooling around. Just like you said, this thing was telepathic with them. They can do that. And anything, now listen to what I'm about to tell you, anything that touches your mind, whether it's telepathically or through your dreams or whatever, is a dangerous aspect. That is the ultimate violation of your privacy.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So that's what makes it dangerous. Now, and this other story that I was going to talk about tonight, the jailhouse thing. That's freaky. You want to tell everybody that one a little bit?
Yeah, I do, Dennis. Can you give me 30 seconds to let my dog out? I'll be right back. I gotta get him. Only take me 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Okay, go ahead. All right, go ahead. Well, while we're waiting on that, I was just gonna say that don't forget Sunday night, 9:00 p.m. You and I, if you're there, we're gonna go down the midnight road with excursions into the unknown. Okay, that's gonna be Sunday night, 9:00 p.m. Okay, it's only gonna be about like 30 minutes. And it's not going to be what you would call an actual podcast kind of a thing. You'll see what I'm talking about when you watch it, but it's going to be interesting. Also, I want to make one more announcement. I'm going to be doing a tutorial. I've had a lot of action on this. A lot of people ask me about it. I'm going to do a tutorial very soon. I may do it this weekend if I get a chance on shadow people. Since Rob was talking a little bit about this shadow entity, I'm going to be talking about a tutorial on shadow people, how to address that problem with them. So be watching for that. Okay, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I should let him out before the show, but he was looking at me. I'm like,
that's right.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah. When it's time, you know.
Yeah, and I didn't want to let him go another half hour longer. He'd have been really ticked off. You'd hear him start howling. Oh.
Yeah. There you go.
But yeah, the jailhouse werewolf, man, that's another. I was reading this maybe a couple years ago, and this is one that I got into the book, and I was thinking, well, maybe it was one that I teetered with, but it was kind of an emotional for this guy because the person this happened to, I'm reading the email and I talked to this guy in person on the phone, and I actually talked to his dad on the phone. And this takes place, the email was sent by the son, and I later talked to his father. So I got this email from this guy. And Dennis, right off the bat, I start reading this, and I'm like, whoa, this guy is like, he must think I'm a priest or a preacher, man, because he starts out the email and he starts telling me about his sins, the sins that he's committed throughout his entire life. He's telling me that he is a career criminal. Not Now, I will say this, as he stated to me, never abused women or children or anything like that, never committed murder. What his thing was, he was a thief. He would break into people's homes, home invasions, rip off, convenience stores. So he was a thief, and that's how he funded his lifestyle. I immediately asked the guy in a follow-up email, hey, you're addicted to any substances? Nope. He says, swear to God, not addicted to anything other than addicted to the lifestyle of stealing. I'm like, okay, well, I'm continuing out the email. So now his father, who I talked to a little later, was a very prevalent, a very prominent man, and had bailed his son out of jail numerous times. So, in other words, Daddy let him do what he wanted, and the son knew he could get away with it because his dad would never let him spend no more than a week in jail. This last time, however, his last crime that he did commit, he was put away for 90 days. And for what he did, probably should have gotten, you or I, if we were a criminal, would have gotten 3 years probably. Home invasion, this, that, and the other. It's like his fifth time that he got busted. So, yeah, this guy, his dad had a lot of influence. So, he's in his jail cell. This is about a week before he is to be released from jail. And he's in there. He's on his cot, his mattress, whatever. He's in his bunk. And it's kind of odd because this is one of those old-fashioned jail cells where it's not, I guess today, the jails now don't have the bars like the Wild Wild West. They're mostly, I guess, thick plexiglass, bulletproof glass, I guess. But he said these were bars, and you could see out, and you could see people walking by, but he was contained by himself, not a cellmate with him. A week prior, again, to being released, there's this, all of a sudden, he's sleeping, he looks up, and there's an appearance of what he says to me. It looked like a werewolf. It was this werewolf standing on two legs, staring into him from the other side of the bars. And he's looking at this thing, and this werewolf entity creature that he proclaims was staring at this guy as he wakes up. He's looking, what is this? This can't be happening. This must be a nightmare. Well, this thing, again, all these stories have a lot of common elements like we've talked about on other shows ad nauseum. Again, it's that telepathy, right? It rings into him, and he gets in his, and he knows that this entity, werewolf entity, is communicating with him and says, you have the potential to be like me, embrace the power. So this werewolf entity telepathically tells this guy, you can be like me, embrace the power. I can feel the evil within your soul. All you have to do is say yes, and we can roam together. This guy's in his jail cell, man. Can you imagine that? So this guy is freaking out. This apparition, this entity, this werewolf, whatever you want to call it, disappears. He gets out of jail. Now, of course, Daddy, being the rich guy and taking care of his, idiot son, purchases him a nice trailer, gives him a vehicle, and this trailer is in the middle of the woods. And he tells his son, hey, listen, me and your mother are finally done with you. This is the last time I bail you out of jail. This is the last time I use my influence to get you out of your wildness, your excursions, your thievery. I bought you the trailer. Here's the car. I don't want to see you again because mother and I just cannot take it anymore. Your mom is going, you wore her out. And as much as she loves you, son, you just have taken your toll on the family. So the son, of course, says, thank you, Dad. Moves into his brand new trailer, has his brand new vehicle. So this guy is there for about 3 months after release from jail. And outside of his trailer in the middle of the woods, he hears bipedal footfall circling around his trailer. And then he hears his footfall on his, I guess he had a deck out on the back door of his trailer. A nice little deck was built as well for the guy. And here's something walking. And so then the walking went away. He waited about a half hour. Then he went out to investigate what the hell was going on outside his trailer. And he goes outside and he says that he sees these oversized bipedal wolf prints on his deck and surrounding the trailer where he felt it was circling. So as he's outside investigating, he now goes back into his trailer, Dennis, and he had a living room set up. He had the TV on. He went and sat down, kind of befuddled as to what's going on. What is this creature or what is this animal that he never, with these oversized tracks? Now he just says, well, I'm turning and I'm going to bed. So this guy now shuts off his TV, goes into his bedroom in his trailer. He's laying in bed. He's settling in, getting ready for sleep. When all of a sudden, about a half hour into his sleep, he wakes up and sees that same werewolf entity apparition at the edge of his bed, staring him down, much like the same exact werewolf he saw in jail. And it's looking at him. It's looking at him. I forgot to mention that this young man, or this man, he told me he's not a believer in God, not a religious fellow, has no beliefs. He only believed in himself, right? Kind of one of these people.
Man.
So this guy starts, for no reason, starts praying to God, who he does not believe in, which is the key here, Dennis. This werewolf, again, telepathically communicates to him. Praying to God is not going to help you. You're a non-believer. When I met you the last time, I said, all you have to do is say yes, and you can join me on our path together. You will fit in with myself and others like me. All you have to do is say yes. This person's petrified. He shuts his eyes. He thinks, as he tells me, he might just say yes just to get over this nightmare, which in fact it wasn't. He starts praying to God again, a non-believer. This entity werewolf kind of vanishes. So this guy is petrified. He leaves the trailer and he drives all the way home to guess who? His security blanket being his father, who told him, do not come back to the house and talk to me and mom. He shows up at his dad's place later, early in the morning, and he tells his dad, and his dad's like, what are you doing here? What did you do now? Dad, I got to tell you something. You're not going to believe me. I know you don't believe me. I know you don't trust me. I'm this, that, and the other. He goes on to tell his dad what has happened to him, not only that night at the trailer, Dennis, but also the night at the jail cell. Okay. So tells his dad says, son, spend the night here and I'm taking you somewhere in the morning. So his son goes to bed. Dad gets up in the morning and takes his son somewhere. Doesn't tell his son. He tells dad. His son asks Dad, where are we going? He goes, just shut up. Just shut up. All right. So they're driving along the way. And again, his father, again, deep pockets, knows a lot of people, a rich guy, takes him to, of course, he knows everybody. He happens to know this priest. Now this priest, Dennis, takes in all sorts of people that have trouble passing lives, and he houses them, and he tries to bring them on the side of God. Explain the situation to the priest. This man, he tells the story all over again to the priest. The priest grabs the father and tells him he's got to stay with me. He's got an evil attachment. Not saying it's a werewolf, but it's something that is evil. He says, I'll take your son in, free room and board. As long as he agrees to my rules, I will teach him the ways of the Lord, I guess it is, right? Father says, okay, tells his son, this is what's going on. He spends about 6 months living with this priest at this place, and when he got there, never had an occurrence happen again. And he feels now that he's cleansed. He leaves the priest. He goes back, tells his dad he's with God, he's with the Lord, whatever. Dad, thank you so much. Goes back, moves into his trailer, and sure enough, he gets another appearance. Just say yes, and then that's where the story ended with this guy. And he says to me, Rob, I don't know what to do. Sign Charlie, or whatever his name was. So, Dennis, again, another one of these demonic entities, man. Probably not a werewolf, but it was a demonic force, was it not?
Well, you got to remember one very important thing about werewolves, shapeshifters, whatever form they take. They are witches. Okay, that's what they are. They are witches, whether male or female or whichever the situation is. That's what you're dealing with here. And like I said earlier, there is a darkness in the sky. Okay, and until he addresses that darkness, I mean, really addresses it and purges himself of it, this thing is probably not going to leave him alone. And it's going to try to wear him down to the point where, because it's attracted to the darkness in him. And that's what it's after. And that's the way this is what we would call this a visitation. And what that means is that what he's seeing is very close to like a shadow person. Okay. And I'm going to be doing a tutorial on shadow people very shortly, sometime this weekend, if I get a chance to do it, on how you deal with certain types of these shadow beings. But that's what this is. Although they can take different shapes when they do this, okay. But this sounds to me like somehow or another, I don't know, just between you and me, there may be more to this story than what we've been told. Okay.
You know, I get that. I tell you, excuse me, Dennis. I get that feeling too. I think he's leaving out some information. I think it's something more to what I read.
He could have been screwing around with something he shouldn't have been messing with, in some aspects. Usually, when darkness comes after you, it comes after you for a reason. It has
Like
a
you said,
valid reason. Yeah.
maybe he was conjuring up something, right?
It could be something in him is doing that. Here's the weird thing about this, okay? And I've said this before, and I'm not going to get deep into that tonight, but the demonic can get behind mental illness, okay? And if you have a personality disorder, it can use that. And here's the freaky thing, Rob. Half of you won't even know what the other half of you's doing.
Oh wow.
And one half of this personality may be demonically influenced. So you may not even, you can be conjuring stuff and not even know you're doing it. I know this is getting into some freaky, real weird mental illness type stuff, but
Yeah.
the demonic uses mental illness as a weapon. It gets behind it, hides behind it. That's why you don't have that many exorcists today. They're scared to mess with this because they don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know whether it's drugs or it's mental illness or it's demons or it's all three of them. You know, that's what you come up against. And when you have people like this that have these kind of episodes, there is something there in that equation that don't add up. He's either got into this somehow or another, he's doing it and don't know he's doing it, there's so many different aspects of this that I don't think you got, the whole story's in there. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I was going to ask you too, and when I say this, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody because I do not at all. But after doing this for a while and talking to people, do you think though, when it comes to, excuse me, the demonic side, do you think that the demonic preys on people that, and again, I don't mean anything negative toward any person, place, or thing, but do you think that a person that's of weak-minded or a person that's down and out, does the demonic forces go after people that aren't very strong-minded versus somebody that's got their p's and q's together and they have a strong will versus somebody that perhaps has a weak will and they're just going traipsing through life in
unfortunately,
mystery.
unfortunately, Rob, some people want to be victims. They just have that
Oh,
mindset.
okay.
They, you and I, we've seen people like that. I just don't care anymore. I don't care. I give
Yeah,
up. I,
yeah.
that's what they love. They love that kind of a submission to them. They want that. They want to get you in that situation where they can
Okay.
get you to do that and become the victim. That's why I've said so many times to people, the darkness in this world wants you as a victim because it fears you as a
Mm,
warrior.
okay. And do you think there's truth to, like, the guy was praying to God, non-believer in God, as you told me, not a spiritual guy at all, and I'm not talking you have to believe in God. If you're spiritual, you believe in what your higher power is, I guess. But if you don't believe and you start praying to whoever it is, in this case it was God, if you're not a true believer though, that's false, and the demon knows you're just trying to
That's
get away
true.
with something. Is that right
That's
or wrong?
These things know when you deal with real, true faith,
Okay.
or you're just going through the motions. I have seen a lot of people like that that think, Rob, that this stuff is like getting an ornament and rubbing it on you, and everything's okay. You're gonna get it at CVS, and you don't have to worry about demons anymore. That it doesn't work that way. But they're going through the motions. They don't. They want to go around the true solution, which is really faith. Okay, that's what the whole solution is. And that's why the demonic wants to keep you fearful, because fear destroys faith. It's an enemy of faith. And they know that if you have faith, you can overwhelm them. You can fight them off. They know that, and they take advantage of that. But if you just go through the motions and there's no belief in it, there's
Yeah.
nothing there. You're just wasting your time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Just like, we all watch the vampire movies where you've got Dracula. My favorite ones were Christopher Lee, where there'll be some guy shaking and Christopher Lee, the vampire, appears and the guy's got the cross in his hand. He's shaking and Christopher Lee goes up and takes his hand and covers the cross, crushes it and says, "It don't work if you don't believe."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You got the. I remember there was one very famous line. What was that one in the movie? What was the name of that movie? The guy had a vampire live next door to him Friday night, and
Oh
during
yeah,
the
that's
movie,
great. That
you
was a
remember
great
that
movie.
was Roddy McDowell or
Roddy
whatever?
McDowell, yes. Yep, I remember that.
The vampire laughed at him. You've got to have faith
Yeah.
to use that.
And Roddy McDowell, wasn't he like a late night talk show host or actor that paraded around as the vampire killer? Yet
Yeah.
he didn't believe in anything and he was afraid of his own shadow type of guy. I remember.
And what's strange about that movie? He was an actor. He didn't believe in any of that, but by gosh, by the end of it, he did. He
By
had to
the end of
believe
it,
it. Yeah.
he sure did. He sure did. That was a scary movie. I remember seeing that as a kid, man. I was like, wow,
But
that
that's
was
what
creepy.
it's like that old saying, Rob. When the bullets are flying and you're in the foxhole, there are no atheists. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, right.
You get in that
Right. Yeah.
situation.
Oh
Yeah.
God, please help me. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Everybody reverts to God despite your beliefs when
Mhm.
your life's in peril.
Yeah. But I think a lot of times we put ourselves in those situations. I know
Yeah.
sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're walking along, we don't ask for it. But sometimes we can be foolish. Here's, and I've told this to many people, and I'm not going to get on this tonight, but anyway, I'll say this. I've had people say, why do I have such a terrible life? I'm on drugs and I drink and I do this. And I say, well, what do you expect? You're putting out negatives. What are you going to get
You
back?
put out negative vibes, Low vibration. JoJo, I like JoJo. She's one of my comes to my chair all the time. Low vibes, low vibration, low vibration. Dennis, you could probably pick up more of this than if you have a higher vibration. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's what we got. One here. It says, let me see if I can get this up here just a second. It says real.
Yeah, moon and noon.
Get my mouse to work right here. Hold on a minute. I lost it. I got it on the screen here. Hold on a minute. It says, nothing confirms God being real more than coming face to face with a demon. You automatically know God is real. Face no longer is a question and answer is good. That's very true. And here's the thing about it. And I saw this in a movie. I forget which movie it was. But if there are demons and there's a devil, then there certainly is a God.
Yes.
That tells you right quick what you're dealing with. It doesn't leave room for doubt.
Yeah, people always say, "Hey, we don't really talk religion a lot on shows because, quite frankly, it's you can sway your audience doesn't tend to like that, and you get into all these debates." But I always say this though: I do, growing up Catholic, I do believe in God, and then people get mad when I say, "Since I do believe in God, therefore I do believe in the devil." Now, that does not mean that I worship the devil, but if God exists, which I believe He does, then therefore so does the devil. That's just my belief. And I leave it at that because I think there's truth to that. That is why the scariest things for me to ever watch are these demonic possession movies.
And the weird thing, Rob, even atheists, okay, they do believe in something. They just don't want to. They're going to believe that they're not going to believe, but they're still believing. That's the weird paradox of that. Okay, but I don't know. It just it comes down to personal belief and how you deal with things. But when it's your life on the line, you better know what you're doing, and you better know where you're at, and hopefully it's in the right place. Because you could run into some bad trouble if it's not.
I do believe this, religion aside, whatever you worship, whoever you worship, whatever you worship, I think it's very important that people believe in something. You have to have a belief in something, no matter what it is.
Outside of yourself, yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because here's the thing about it: if we believe only in ourselves, we let ourselves down. We will be very disappointed all the time. Okay, that's just the way that goes. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
It's always great to believe in yourself, but always believe that you're going to let yourself down because not everything is 100% either.
That's true. Very true.
You have some things you excel in, and some things you fail in.
Those two stories really stuck out. I mean, there's a lot of other great stories in this book. Okay?
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you.
Those two stuck out with me, but there are some other good. Everybody needs to get this book and read it. If you haven't read Volume 1, get Volume 1, okay? And then it'll lead you into Volume 2. But there are some much more interesting stories to be read in here. That's just two of them. But this is a fascinating subject, dogmen and these. And here's the thing about it, Rob. To me, when it comes to this is sort of the weird part, the darker part of nature that you're looking at.
Yes, sir, for sure. This the second book definitely entails more darkness. Where the first one was more on the flesh and blood side, with some elements of the paranormal. This one seems like more thought provoking, I thought, and I think a little more wow, really, so I was happy with that. And thank you for letting me share a couple of stories and having me on because I'm going to put I'm starting a different project, as I said. I'm going to put these two to rest. I'm not going to come out with a part 3 for that's something down the road, Dennis, because after a while, you got to do something else to
Oh yeah.
refresh and recharge your energy, your vibration, I guess.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, I've done a little vampire and werewolf hunting myself, and I said this to somebody the other day: if you're going to do that, you better have a plan in place.
Yeah.
If you find them, if you find out what you're looking for, you better have a plan in place. So you might want to think about that before you go out looking for a dog, man. What are you going to do if you find him?
I know. I mean, I've never experienced a dog, man. Would I like to come across one? I hate to say probably yes, but I know that I'd be scared as all get out.
Mm-hmm. Well, there comes that point. Yeah, definitely. Especially when you face the unknown like that,
It
that it gets real. You know what I mean?
it is real, and let me tell you something though. Throughout my life, I've seen ghosts, paranormal, this and that. But I gotta tell you, for most people that in the chat room, I know a lot of them. They've all heard my Bigfoot encounter, which was more demonic than anything, and that scared the hell out of me. So I'm kind of and it kind of doesn't phase me as much because that thing I saw was something that I still to this day really can't fully process. Just the way that all happened like that. And so for people out there, that's why I like writing the books so their stories get told because a lot of people walked alone like I did. And that's really the basis behind both books, to be honest with you, and the channel, really.
Well, I'll tell you what, Rob. Here's the interesting thing: knowing the demonic the way I know it, I know without doubt, knowing that it's in everything in this world. It's
Yep.
definitely probably has some inroads into the cryptids as well. There's probably that element there, and that may be what you picked up on with your experience.
Yep.
I'm gonna tell you something. We have, I call it a spiritual compass in all of us. There's that meter there, that tells us when we run into something very bad sometimes, or something's not right, and we need to pay attention to that, like you did with your incident. You paid attention to it.
Yeah.
You have to sometimes pay attention, but it's there for a reason. It warns us. It's a safeguard, I think, a spiritual safeguard that we have when we run into the. I have been in situations my own self where evil was so thick you could cut it with a knife. It's just the way, like a fog in the air. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I spent one night, and I'll talk about this one day. I spent one night on the Isle of the Dead, which is a graveyard on an island.
Okay.
And you talking about haunted to high heaven. This place was something else. But that night, when the fog rolled in and you could see these shapes and forms in the fog moving around these headstones and stuff, you get to some very freaky things going on. You feel this.
Yeah.
You know what you're dealing with. It's not something natural at all.
I got that feeling. Now I didn't have that feeling when I had my encounter, but I got to tell you this really briefly. When I went to the Alabama Bigfoot conference back several months ago, and I drove down with Krista from the Blondes and Booze. I flew into St. Louis. She and I drove to Alabama. So, and Krista's research had been through with Brandy the LBL, and she goes, "Hey man, you want to take a detour? I'll take you through the LBL." I'm like, "Are you kidding? Do we have time?" She goes, "Well, yeah, we'll just take our time." So, Dennis, I got to tell you something. I've been to many forests around Michigan, camping and stuff like that, and we went through the LBL. And I got to tell you, man, got out of the vehicle, started, walking around.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time in my life, I felt something not natural in that place. And I'm not saying that because the LBL is the biggest thing since hot potatoes. We all know the stories. But I must utterly tell you that in my inner mind, in my inner soul, man, I could feel an energy that I did not like. And I'm not saying that to make the show entertaining. I literally felt it because Even where I saw the Bigfoot, I didn't feel that. Of course, I was on a boat, 90 feet outside shoreline, but that's the only place I've ever been in where I felt something different going on. And yeah,
You know, the LBL was supposedly a cursed place. The Native
yeah.
Americans supposedly called it a cursed, and also it's full of graveyards. By the way, since we talked about that tonight,
And by the way, guess where she took me? Yeah, in the graveyard. One of the there's like 200, there's tons of graveyards there. We happen to get out walking through the graveyard as well. And she says, "Oh, by the way, Rob, by the way," she says to me, "You're walking on the dead." I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, we're walking through a graveyard." I'm like, "Oh, great, thank you."
It can be very interesting place, especially after sundown.
Yeah,
absolutely.
well,
But
we were.
you pick up on stuff like that, Rob, and you have to pay attention to it. Like I said, it's I think a spiritual safeguard that we have. We all have that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely.
And I've always thought I could sense things even at a young age, and I think that I know some of the things in my youth that I've seen today. It makes more sense today for me. I didn't know what it was, 30 years ago.
Well, the older you get, the more your mind settles. When you're young, you're always thinking about doing this, doing that. You're diverting your mind in too many different areas. And when you get older, I call it you can focus your mind a little bit better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's time when you get somewhat older, and I think that's what we've experienced, that mind focusing kind of thing. But when you deal a lot with darkness, when you deal with subjects like we're just talking about tonight, and all that, you get a sixth sense for it. You do eventually get very sensitive to it. I think that this goes with the territory. When you broach a subject like this. Absolutely.
I think I agree with that 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And and I've had a lot of people come to me over the years, Rob. So why do I feel like this? Why spirits bothering? I said, well, look, you're probably a very sensitive person. And that's just your makeup. That's what you are. A leopard can't change his spots. And you got to learn to deal with it. And you got to learn to live with it because it's part of you.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I agree with that. It is. It becomes a part of you.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. This has been a great show. And
I loved it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I always have fun when I get with you. Anyway,
we do, Dennis. I've been on a couple times now, and you've been on my show a handful of times, and you'll be back joining me around Halloween. We're gonna have a special Halloween show, you and I, and which will be a lot of fun coming up in October. So I'm looking forward to that. As always,
yeah, we got that lined up. That ought to be an interesting evening. Absolutely.
It'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, you want to tell everybody about your shows again?
Oh, yeah, sure. Everybody, if you're new here and you don't know who I am, Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube. Please, I'm on Tuesday nights at 9 o'clock with Krista. Thursday afternoons tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern. And I'm also on Saturday now at midnight. So 3 days a week I'm on with my live shows. I also once a week try to get out a story on video for you guys. And so, yeah, please subscribe if not already. Thank you ever so much for those that have. And yeah, my 2 books. I mean, this is my second book. However, all you need to do if you'd like to buy the book or whatever, it's up to you. I'm on Amazon. Type in Bigfoot Michigan Rob on your Amazon browser. Both books will pull up. And I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate the opportunity. And of course, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Or now X, as they say.
The picture of the book. That's book 2. If you haven't read book 1, get that, and then get book 2. You definitely want. And of course, we'll be waiting for book 3. Okay.
Yeah.
And
oh yeah, thanks.
This
wow.
Interesting.
Thank you,
Dennis.
An
interesting thing here. They say that you're one of the top podcasters in the Michigan area.
I just got that sent to me. 100 best Michigan podcasts. Number 1 is the Michigan Insider. Then they got me. I come in at number 8. I was tickled when I got that. I'm like, yeah, that's. I didn't know that. Show me the money, man. I'm number 8 in Michigan. Come on. We make no money doing this. You know that, Dennis.
Well, you do a lot of work into it. You deserve that, definitely. You've had a lot of work. You're always a busy guy. You're always got a lot of directions you're going in.
Yeah, yeah.
So you
So, yeah.
definitely need that. Absolutely. Well, I
You
appreciate
know,
you being here tonight, brother. And it's been
it's always a pleasure.
fascinating.
I love coming on. You can have me on any time, much like you're always on with me. So any time, and trust me, if you need a good storytelling, I've got 100 stories I can always share and dissect on hunting the shadows.
That's what it's all about. I love the stories, man. I have all these many years of my career, and I've been doing this for over half a century now. I always
Wow.
love to read about the things that happen to other people, the case histories, and all that. It's fascinating stuff. And it never gets old. And when you have
Yep.
books like this, they put them out in book form. You can read them. Oh yeah, it makes it a whole lot better. Absolutely. And I'll try to get you back on here before the next book comes out. Okay.
Oh yeah, that'll be a little while. I think third book though will
Yeah.
be about my paranormal life from 5 years old till current times. I'm taking a break from the true cryptid encounters. It's gonna be my true, I guess, autobiography of my weird life. And it's pretty weird.
Oh,
I got a whole bunch that's happened to me in my lifetime. I'm deciding to do a book on that. That's my next project.
that sounds
And
great.
we'll discuss that one. That's gonna be a little while yet. I got a lot of this will be a big one. It's gonna be a novel. It's gonna be thick.
Oh, all right.
Yep.
That will be something to look forward to, definitely.
Yep. Thanks.
I'll buy that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being here, brother. And you take care of yourself. And we will, if I don't see you before then, I'll see you Halloween. Okay.
I'm sure you
And
will. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks everybody in chat. If I didn't say hi to you guys, love you all. Thank you for coming on in. Thank you so much.
sounds great. All right. You take care, brother.
All right, bro.
All right.
Night.
Okay. All right, that's my good friend Bigfoot Michigan Rob there, and it was interesting. Check his book out now. Don't forget it. True Cryptid Encounters, Book 2. Pick it up. It's on Amazon. Available on Amazon as well. That's where I got my copy. And check it out. I want to appreciate you all being here tonight. It's been a fantastic show, and he and I always have a lot of fun when we get together. And appreciate all your comments and appreciate your support. This was a solemn day, absolutely. 23 years ago, the world changed for all of us. But you know what? It's out of our hands now. It's in better hands than ours. And we can be assured that our creators are looking out for us. Absolutely. The country's still here. Keep praying for your country, okay? Not just today, but every day. Because it needs all the prayers it can get. Absolutely. Just like we do. All of us here, we need that as well. So keep doing that. And I hope, yes, that God will bless you all, that you have a fantastic rest of the week, and that we'll get together again Friday night for Paranormal Point of View. Okay? And until then, and until we get together again, remember, non tambo mala. What does that mean? Fear no evil. Absolutely. And until then, my friends, God's speed.